It's the dead of winter in central Pennsylvania. I guess it's time to snowbird down to Florida. Hey everybody, this is Paul from the 125 Roller Coaster Challenge, and it's time to show some love to our Florida parks. So we're going to kick that off with making the grade at Busch Gardens Tampa. Now, since we started going to this amazing park, we lost a few coasters that we loved, but they still have 2 top 10 coasters, so let's see how their entire lineup stacks up. Before we dive in, let's discuss how we come up with each grade and what they mean. Each roller coaster gets a score between 1 to 10 on layout, condition, theming, ride experience, and of course, the fun factor. The average score for this section is a 5. Now let's break these down quickly. Here's a blank coaster report card so you can see what we're talking about. When it comes to layout, we're looking for creativity. Is this a layout that we've seen before or something made just for the park? Condition is simple. Is it being taken care of or is it becoming so rough that it's unbearable? Now, while we're not huge fans on theming on rides, did they make an effort or did they just throw a few signs up and call it a day? The ride experience has to do with everything you see when you first enter the queue to when you stagger off the ride. While individual ride operators change from day to day, this score deals with the queue layout, the station, getting on and off the ride, and of course the photo booth or store at the end. And finally, the fun factor is pretty simple. Was the coaster actually fun? Which is really the whole point of the ride. Now, once we put all the scores together, we come up with a grade, and they break down as follows. An A score means we must ride this coaster every time we go to the park. No matter what the lines look like, we have to make sure we get a ride, or 2, or 3 on every trip. Now, a B grade means we gotta ride it. If the lines are long, we're gonna keep checking back from time to time. Because this coaster is so good, if we miss it, the ride home's gonna be sad. In school, the grade of a C is average. And for us, when a coaster gets this grade, we try to ride it. We're gonna check in, but if the line is too long, we can skip it and still have a great day. A D graded coaster is only considered if there's no line. Yep, it pretty much has to be walk-on for us to ride this coaster. And when a coaster gets an E or F grade, we rode the coaster once, we got the credit, and we're probably going to never ride it again. They might not be bad coasters, but for us, we got the credit and it's time to move on. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's begin with one of the oldest coasters in the park, Kumba. Now, this coaster has been a staple of their lineup since 1993 and was an early B&M coaster. It has 7 inversions, which feature a dive loop, a 0G roll, interlocking corkscrews, and their iconic Cobra roll. Now, let's see how the report card looks. This grade gets all 8s across the board, with only condition taking a dip at a 6. This is actually an improvement from the first time we rode it, where it would have got a 3 because it was that bad. But over the past few years, they have been making some adjustments, and to be honest, they're really working. Currently, this coaster is down, and our fingers are crossed that it is only temporary. Seriously, this coaster has been rumored to be on the chopping block, but has survived so far. We give this coaster a solid B, where we gotta ride it if it's open, because you never know when your final ride is truly going to be your final ride. Kumba means roar, and we hope it's a very long time before this roar goes silent. We talked about the coasters that have closed since the first time we started going to the park, and one of those was the classic Sand Serpent Mouse Coaster. It didn't take long for the park to add its replacement this year, Phoenix Rising. This is one of those new family inverted coasters created by B&M, and it fits a niche that this park really needed, the family coaster. While we still need to get this coaster credit, we have ridden a few of these, and here's our assessment of these rides in general. The layout is pretty similar to the others, and it gets a 7. The condition is 10 out of 10 since it's brand new, and let's admit it, B&M makes some pretty amazing coasters. The rest of the categories get 8s, which gives this coaster a C+ grade. Of course, we're going to flock to this coaster when we visit Busch Gardens Tampa next. But after that, we're going to try to ride the ride. But with all the others that are in this lineup, it will not be a top priority. Since we are already in the back of the park, we might as well talk about the first ever dive coaster in the US, SheiKra. So what is a SheiKra anyway? Well, it's a species of African hawk known to dive bomb their prey, which is pretty fitting for this ride. See, you actually get to learn some stuff with our videos. This is another B&M coaster and fits into the dive coaster genre, where you have long trains, in this case 8 people across, and 3 rows deep, and then they hang you over the drop before it releases you, just to build that fear and suspense. Now this is a 200-foot coaster with an awesome splash effect at the end. So let's look at the numbers. The layout and the ride experience are solid 8s. This was the first one, so the layout has to be pretty original. The condition, theming, and fun factor are 7s, giving this coaster an overall B-, because unlike Phoenix Rising, we would be bummed if we visited this park and didn't get at least one ride. So what do you think of SheiKra? Is this a coaster you can skip, or is it something you gotta ride every time? Let us know in the comments section. While we can wait in line for a bit when it comes to SheiKra, we will wait an hour to get on this next coaster. Montu has consistently been in our top 10 roller coasters since we first rode it. This B&M inverted coaster is one of the originals coming into the park in 1996, but still has the intensity after almost 20 years. What separates this coaster from the others in its genre is the trenches, where you fly through and you just miss hitting those walls. So, how did it do on the report card? As you can see, only the condition gets below a 9, with it being 19 years old. The fun factor and theming are solid 10s, while the layout and ride experience are 9s. Is it really hard to believe that our 10th ranked roller coaster would be a solid A? We not only jump in line right away, but we need to get in our depth seat for a few of these rides. It's the back row, far left if you're curious. While Montu is an original, we can't say the same for their Skyrocket 2 model, Tigris. This is the same ride as Tempesto at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Phobia Fear at Lake Compounce, and Electric Eel at SeaWorld San Diego. So what do we think of these coasters? Well, not too much if you look at the report card. While most of the scores are average 5s and 6, when it comes to the ride experience, it gets a 2. Why? Well, these are some of the most uncomfortable trains we have ever encountered. Seriously, just getting into your seat is a challenge with no real foot space to maneuver. Add in the restrictive restraints, and these coasters are avoided on most of our visits. This is a solid D grade, because even if there is no line, we still think twice before getting on this coaster. Once is usually more than enough, unless I'm with someone who hasn't experienced it before. Now we're halfway done with this video, and if you are enjoying what you're seeing, why not hit the like button? If you want to see more of this type of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Now let's dive back into the coasters with their kids option. Being a SeaWorld park, Busch Gardens Tampa has the Sesame Street license. So of course that means that our favorite Muppet, Grover, gets another coaster named after them. For this coaster, it's now Air Grover with an airplane theme. So let's see how Grover did. As you can see from the report card, this is a pretty average coaster, but we do have to admit that the theming gets a slight boost with the funny Grover at the front of the train. The grade is like most kiddie coasters for us, an E, one and done. And that's how we roll when it comes to these rides. Now let's talk about a ride that gets mixed reviews from a lot of guests, and that's Cheetah Hunt. This launch coaster is like nothing else that we have ever encountered, and we actually consider it more like a Maverick at Cedar Point with a Blitz coaster distinction. This ride is all about changes of speeds and quick transitions. So how do we grade it? The layout and the ride experience are both solid 9s. We have never seen a layout like this. Its condition is an 8, while the theming is cool, but only a 7. The fun factor for us is where this ride makes its mark, with 10 out of 10. All in all, this ride is a solid B+. We love flying through the Serengeti on this coaster, and we must get on this ride every visit. While Cheetah Hunt ends up on the positive side of our grading, will Cobra's Curse be the same? This mock ride has a lot of unique elements, including its elevator lift, spinning aspect, going backwards, and even the fantastic theming. But how do we grade it? Well, mostly 8s for the theming, layout, and condition, while the ride experience and fun factor are 7s. So this should put this coaster at a gotta ride at least, right? Well, not really for us. We give Cobra's Curse a C+, mainly because of the spinning, the going backwards, and that's just really a challenge for us on the motion sickness front. Even with our relief band, this ride gets us every time, so we try to ride it, but if we are there for just a day, we don't want to take the risk of being knocked out, so we kind of skip it. We have one more coaster to discuss, and what can we say about Iron Quasi? Considering that this RMC coaster has been our top coaster for the past 2 years in a row out of 388 different coasters. Where do you think this report card's gonna land? All 10s, except for theming. This is our honor roll student getting scholarship offers from all the Ivy League schools. Iron Quasi is our first ever A+, and is the first thing I hit when I visit this park and the last ride I get before I leave. So, our final grades are as follows. Iron Quasi gets an A+, while Montu, another top 10 coaster, gets a solid A. Our Gotta Ride coasters include Cheetah Hunt, Kumba, and Sheikro. We try to ride if the lines aren't too bad for Cobra's Curse and the new Phoenix Rising. If there's no line, we might jump on Tigris, and we got the coaster credit for Air Grover, so we really don't need to do that again. So thanks for watching, and if you want to see more Busch Gardens Tampa, check out the video on the screen.